today the topic is about target-driven life or target-driven living, and the overall heading of the topic is how to manage daily stresses through target-driven living, and I'll explain to you what that means in a minute. Actually, let me just go to the next slide, and that'll give us an idea. So, target-driven. What do I mean by target-driven? Basically, in a nutshell, that is setting goals and adopting a daily plan to fulfill them. Now, I could have just as well said the heading is how to manage stress through setting goals. I could have done that, but I didn't want to do that, and I'll explain to you why. Because when you say goals, reason number one, when you say goals or setting goals, because people have heard that phrase so many times, we tend to shut down. You know that sense of familiarity. You say, oh, I've heard this before. I know this stuff. I'm good. That's one. And therefore, people tend to sort of shut down when you talk about goal setting. There is this sort of negative aura to it for some reason. I don't know why, but I've encountered that a few times in a few seminars that I've done to do with goal setting. That when the moment you mention goal setting, people go, oh, here we go again. And therefore, I avoided that. That was the first reason why I avoided it. But the second reason is setting goals in itself is not enough. And I'm sure you'll agree with me that over in our own experiences, you've probably set so many goals, but you haven't actually done much to fulfill them. Because even if I sit down here and think and say, you know what, I want to do A, B, C, D, E, F by the end of the month. Though I haven't written down anything, I have set goals. That itself is setting goals. But then that won't do me much if I won't achieve them, or if I don't set a plan or set a strategy on how to accomplish those goals, if you like. And therefore just setting goals itself is not enough. And just setting goals itself is not going to alleviate any stresses. In fact, the opposite is true. If you're setting goals and you're not achieving them, if anything, it's just going to add more stress to you, because you kind of feel like you have failed. You know what I mean? So that's why that's another reason why I avoided using the title of avoiding stress through goal setting, because it's way more than that. It's more than just setting goals. That's why I say target driven fits better, because when you say I'm living a target driven life, it means everything you do is geared towards fulfilling the target or hitting the target. So say if you have a goal, then it's not so much about the goal, it's about what you actually do on a daily basis to achieve that goal, if that makes sense. And that's what target-driven life means, basically. So whenever you wake up in the morning, the question is, how much of your life, how much of what you do on a daily basis is geared towards your future plans? How much is it geared towards your ambitions? How much is it geared towards your dreams? How much is it geared towards whatever it is that you plan for your future? And the future can be anything from next week to next month to next year to a lifetime, basically. So that's what target-driven life means. Setting goals, but also adopting a daily plan to fulfill them. Daily is a very important word, something that you do on a continuous basis. Also, I've already mentioned that when you have this sort of plan, it does reduce stress levels, and we'll see a bit more of that in a minute. I also wanted to mention something else: a sense of overwhelming. I'll just ask a quick question. You can just raise up your hand, or you can just give me a nod if you agree with this. Have you ever woken up in the morning and felt like you have so much that you need to do? You feel like this sense of being overwhelmed. You feel like, oh my goodness, you've just woken up in the morning and you feel like, oh my goodness, like the world is crashing on top of you. Or right in the evening before you go to bed, and you kind of feel that, that nagging feeling like there was something you were supposed to do and you haven't done, but you don't quite know what that thing is. And it's so frustrating. And you're going to bed and you kind of feel like, this is so frustrating. I can't really put my finger on anything. But I kind of feel like I'm a failure. There is something I should have done that I haven't done. You know, that sense of being overwhelmed. And to me personally, I think planning goes a long way into alleviating some of that kind of stress, because it eats you, and you really are helpless. You really can't do anything about it, because you don't quite know what the problem is. You don't quite know what it is that you should do that you haven't done. And the reason why you don't quite know is because you didn't set yourself up to know what you're supposed to do. So what tends to happen is you've got a lot of things in your mind that you feel like, I should be doing these things, but obviously you're not going to complete them all in one day. And then as a result, at the end of the day, you feel like a failure. I'll give you another example. If you also agree with me, just give me a nod. Another scenario is, say you're thinking of doing something. You have to probably, there is a certain project that you have to do. You have to complete it maybe by a certain time. Maybe there's a couple of phone calls you need to make. Maybe there is something that you have to do. Maybe there is a garden that you need to sort out, like our good friend Victor is doing. And it's the work that you've left pending to do. Maybe there is some DIY activity you need to do at home to kind of do it, and you still have your day job to do. And you've got all these things kind of crashing on top of you in the morning, and you kind of feel like, I have to do all these things. But the truth of the matter is, you're not going to be able to do all of them in one day, are you? No. But if you don't have a plan in place, in your mind, you still feel like, I have to do all these things. And then regardless of how much you accomplish in that day, come the end of the day, you still feel like a failure. Why? Because at the end of the day, you still haven't accomplished everything. Probably you didn't get time to do the garden. Maybe you just started the DIY, but you didn't quite complete it. Maybe you didn't get time at all to make the phone calls you thought you were going to make or you're supposed to make, or maybe you just made 1 out of 10, or maybe you managed to do one task into completion, but still at the end of the day, you kind of feel like you haven't quite accomplished things. Why? Because when you woke up in the morning, you had all these things to accomplish that you haven't accomplished. But the truth is, you weren't going to accomplish them in one day anyway. So if you had a plan, and you had broken it down and had a chunk of work that you would have said, right, I've got all these things, but I'm not going to finish it all today, but I'm just going to do these bits today, and set out just to do that as your daily plan, then come the end of the day, you can assess yourself and say, right, in the morning, I had set out to do this bit, not the whole bit, but this bit, and you can confidently say that I've actually completed what I set out to do today. And that really alleviates a lot of stress. Yes, you haven't completed everything, but at least you've completed what you set yourself out to do today. And that relieves that sense of overwhelming, that relieves that sense of depressed, that relieves all that pressure, all that struggle, all that stress. And that's why I think planning and living a target-driven life is really important for even our mental health and our well-being in general. A survey done by Robert Epstein, who is a psychologist and a motivational speaker in America, found out that the #1 tool for effective stress management is planning. And so what I've just explained here is not just far-fetched, it's not just my own making, it's actually been proved statistically through a survey that was done. And that's just one of the surveys. Many surveys have been done, and they've been done both on a personal level, that is on an individual level, that, you know, when you're an effective planner and you have lots of plans for your life and everything is sort of designed that way, then you become a happier person, less stressed, and you get more out of your day and your life in general as a result. But it's not just at an individual level, also at an organization level. That even in organizations, if you have an organization that is sort of all over the place, no plan, the expectations are not very clear. You go to work, you're not quite sure what is expected of you. You're not quite sure what you need to accomplish in that day. So you're there and you're kind of like, what is going on? Same problem. It leads to stress. That's when you have people going in there, getting into each other's toes, because people don't know their boundaries. They don't quite know what they're expected of them. They don't know what their responsibilities are for the day. They end up into trouble with their supervisors, and you have all the problems. You have stress levels, you have low morale, you have reduced productivity as a result. Because again, if people don't have targets to reach, then what do? They end up just doing the bare minimum, if at all there is any. And and eventually you end up having high staff turnover. A lot of time people leave their work, not because there is so much to do, but it's because somehow someone goes to work and they don't get that sense of fulfillment, that sense of that they're actually contributing, sense of that they have a worth, they have a value at the place of work. And usually if there is no planning, if there is no strategy, if there is no sense of that I have accomplished something, obviously someone will feel like I don't belong here, and chances are they'll seek greener pastures elsewhere. So it's not just an individual issue, it's also a corporate problem, it's also an organizational issue. If you don't have plans, if your planning is not up to scratch, then you definitely encounter some issues. Statistics, I love statistics. Let's do a bit of statistics, but before we do that, actually let me stop sharing for a moment. Let me get out of that screen for a minute. Let's do a bit of a polling here amongst ourselves. I've got 3 questions that I'm going to throw at you, and I want you to respond to it as well as you can. Just bear with me a second. Let me see if I can. In just a second. Okay, so I've got 3 questions. Before I bring them up, I've got 3 questions. One is about goals and plans, what I've just been talking about. Another one is a bit of specialized nature, a little bit. It's about New Year's resolutions. Now, New Year's resolutions, when I say New Year's resolutions, I don't necessarily mean the goals and the resolutions you make on New Year's Eve or New Year's Day. So I'm using that term more loosely to those sort of goals that you tend to make and say, like, you know, in the coming year I want to achieve this, you know, and we do say that a lot, that come next year I want to have accomplished this, even if that is in the middle of the year, even if that is now. You come and say, you know what, come round about September next year, I want something accomplished, I want something done, I want to be here, whether that be financially, whether that be in employment, whether that be academically, whatever it is, exercise, your fitness, relationships, whatever. So anything to do with that sort of goals will fall into the category of New Year's resolutions. Okay, so it's not necessarily on what you say on New Year's Eve or New Year's Day. So we'll have a questionnaire on New Year's resolution, and the last one will be on to-do lists. Now, to-do list is things like, you know, what I was just talking about earlier. You wake up in the morning, do you know exactly what you're setting yourself up to do on that particular day, what you want to achieve on that day? And therefore, I'm going to try and do a bit of a poll on that as well. So let me bring the questions up, and let me launch it. Can you see the poll? Yeah, you can. Right, so like I explained to you, you've got 3 questions. Question number 1 is on goals and plans, the second is on New Year's resolutions, and the third one is on to-do lists. Now, look at the options given for each question and choose the one that best describes you for each question. So you can only choose one. So like for goals and plans, the first option is I don't have a written plan. Second option is I have a written plan, but I don't follow it. Next, I have a written plan and I follow it to some extent. And the last one is I live by my written plan daily. On New Year's resolution, I don't make them, full stop. I make them, but don't follow through. I make them and fulfill them to some extent. I make them and complete them all the time. And the last one is to-do list. I don't do daily lists. I sometimes make to-do lists, but don't follow them regularly. And the last one is I make lists and follow them all the time. So if you could vote, please choose one. And then once you've answered all the 3 questions, you can submit your answers. I'll give you a couple of seconds to do that. Right. We've got 3 more people that haven't voted yet, so I'll give you another couple of seconds to do that while I'm scrolling through the chat to see what's up there. Two more people haven't voted. If you can, I'll give you 10 more seconds, and then we.
I hope you're not going to expose our answers, are you?
No, I won't even know. I won't even know who's, because it's done anonymously. Yeah, it's done anonymously. I don't even know who's voted which way. So don't worry about it. If that's your concern, don't worry. I wouldn't know. Yes.
Just wait. How do I vote? Do I click on the question? Or how?
Yes. Yeah.
All right.
If you click on the answer, it will.
Oh, fantastic! Yours. All right. Let me go back.
You do that. I'll give you 10 more seconds to do that, and then we'll carry on. In the meantime, while you guys are still voting, Brother Victor, I see a chat here. You said that there is another example. Someone else set the agenda for your day with target-driven expectations. Do you want to elaborate a bit more on that, Victor, if you're there? Hello, Victor?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. I just read your chat here, and I was wondering if you wanted to elaborate a bit more on what you just wrote there.
On
you said there is another example of where someone else sets the agenda. Yeah,
that's right. That's right.
Yeah, go on.
They come to you with expectations that, if only I present to this person, they would achieve what I want. And sometimes you're not quite prepared for it. It's not part of what your daily thinking is.
Yeah.
Yet that, there's an amount of stress that is placed on you to meet that particular goal that they want to achieve. It could be something that's very serious. It could be something that, in your opinion, is trivial, but to them, they want it done, and they expect that it should be done.
Yeah. So yeah, that's absolutely true. Yeah, so you can see there are so many different examples that lack of that planning, lack of having that target-driven mentality can really mess up your mind, because basically your mind can't differentiate that this is more important than this unless you've actually set it out that way. That's the problem with the mind. As long as you have it in there, your mind says this hasn't been done, full stop. And therefore, unless you have these targets that you've actually actively set out for you to do, whether on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis, year, whatever, but not having that in place removes that ability for yourself to turn around and say, have I achieved what I was supposed to do? And therefore, you look and you feel like a failure all the time in your own eyes. And sometimes, like you remember when I asked at the very beginning, sometimes you don't quite even know why you're feeling the way you're feeling. But actually, if you dig deep, you realize it's because you feel like you haven't quite accomplished anything, because really you didn't set out to accomplish anything to start with. So yeah, you're absolutely right. But something else I want to point out into that as well, there is an element of sense of direction. Problem of not having a plan is you end up becoming a jack of all trades, in the sense that you're being pulled around everywhere. You don't quite know what's important to you. For instance, if I ask you in your day, what's the most important thing for you to do in a particular day, the only way for you to know that is if you have a master plan, if you know where you're actually going. For instance, if I say if I'm a salesperson, let me use that as an example. If I'm a salesperson, my success is anchored on how many sales I make, isn't it? I mean, at the end of the day, I need to make sales, and to make sales, I need to make phone calls. I need to call up the prospective customers and do the pitch or whichever way I'm doing it, and make sure I get them to buy whatever it is I'm selling. And the more phone calls I make, the greater the chance of them of me making the sale. And therefore, to me, making those phone calls becomes a really important thing. But then if I haven't set myself out with the target of making the sale to start with, then how do I know that making as many phone calls as possible is the most important thing? How do I differentiate between making phone calls maybe and filling out paperwork? You understand? Because then you might find yourself at work, you've got paperwork to do, you've got phone calls to make, you've got a house to sweep, you've got kids to take out, you've got a garden to sort out, you've got lots of things. But then how do you set out your priorities if you don't quite have a plan and know exactly where you're trying to go? So having that target and using that target to drive you gives you that sense of direction and allows you to set your priorities right. And therefore you can kind of look and say, right, if I don't have so much time and I'm going to have to choose what not to do and what to do, I know that these phone calls I must do will always go into the must do column because they are the ones that are most aligned to where I'm going. You see, so there is so much to this planning, and we'll see it the more we get deeper into this. But thank you very much, Victor, for your contribution. Now we've got our polls and we've got the results here. Let me just share it with you, and then we'll discuss them in real time. Here we are. Question number 1: goals and plans. 29% say I don't have a written plan. Thank you for your honesty. That's about a third of us. And about just over half say I have a written plan and I follow it to some extent. So it's sort of like hit and miss, on and off, which as we would have expected, most of us will fall into that category. And you've got 14%, about an eighth of us, who say I live by my written plan daily. That means they've got that. Well done, whoever that is. Well done you. On the second question, New Year's resolutions, again, about 14%, which is just one person, says I don't make them at all. 29%, I make them, I don't follow through. That's quite typical. 43%, I make them and fulfill them to some extent. And 14%, again, I make them and complete them all the time. So you can see where we kind of fall into this. That you can see majority of us fall into that area where we do make these plans, and overwhelming 86%. We do make these plans, but some of us don't follow them through. Others, we kind of do it to some extent, but we don't quite succeed that well. And others, well, we just don't make them at all. On the last one with the to-do lists, I don't do daily lists at all. You have one person, 14%. Most of us fall into the category again. I sometimes make to-do lists, but I don't follow them regularly. So yeah, so the reason I did this poll is to kind of show where generally people are, and to also show you, because sometimes you might look at yourself and think like, oh, I'm a total failure. But then I just wanted to realize that most of us are in pretty much the same area. For instance, like with the to-do list, you can realize almost all of us are in that area where we do kind of do them, but we don't quite do them, if that makes sense. So the aim of this session is to kind of have this conversation more and see how we can kind of hone that skill a bit more and make use of these lists and make use of these plans more and make use of these resolutions, if you like. Some people don't quite like the idea of New Year's resolutions, partly because we tend not to do them and they make us so frustrated that come the end of the following year and realize we haven't done anything. So we kind of give up on them. But it's very important to have this target-driven attitude in everything, from daily to-do lists to year's resolutions to goals and plans generally. So that was really good. Thank you for your inputs on that. Let me stop that one and get rid of the polls, and let's crack on now. Let me bring back the screen share we had, and where is it? Right, there we are. What's going on here? At 5. Oh, it needs to be here. Yeah, okay. We want statistics. Now, 88% of New Year's resolutions fail. Okay. Now, what does this mean? It means that, and I think this is very similar to what we got, isn't it? Because I think ours was like, I think it was only one person that said they do them completely, which was about 14%, which leaves about 86% that do tend to fail on that. So 88% is quite consistent, actually. That was a study in 2007 done by Bristol University. So 88% of us will make resolutions, but we won't quite accomplish them. And the reasons for those failures on that same statistic shows that 35% say the reason they do not succeed is because they have unrealistic goals. So someone would look back and say, the reason I did not succeed in my resolve last year to do such and such is because it was unrealistic, okay? 32% say they lost track, which basically means that they set those goals, but then as they went, somehow they just, they lost track of it, of what they need to do to realize them, and it didn't quite work. 23%, frankly, they just forgot. It means, and I mean, that has happened to me many times in the past as well. Come the end of the year, I used to love doing New Year's resolutions. So like, right, this year I must do this. And then come the end of January, I have completely forgotten what I even said. And usually I would remember what I said come the end of the year when I'm about to make a New Year's resolution. I realize I'm making exactly the same resolution. I'm like, I actually made the same resolution last year. What is going on? So yeah, that's an interesting one. And 10% would say the reason that their resolutions or their plans don't succeed is because they have too many of them. Now I've got these fancy words in the brackets. Now the reason I have these words, this is what it means. When you have 35% saying they have unrealistic goals, what these people are really saying is that it's not so much that those goals were unrealistic, but it's that they were not pragmatic enough in fulfilling them. Now, what do I mean by that? What I mean by unpragmatic? Pragmatism means being very thorough, and an easier word is being thorough. When you set a goal, you remember at the beginning I said sometimes we set goals, and setting goals itself is not enough. You must have a plan to follow through. You must have a plan where you can address that goal in such a way that it informs your daily habits, per se. It informs what you do on a daily basis, what you do every day. And therefore, if you don't do that, what ends up happening is that you have these goals and you kind of feel like, no, this thing can't be achieved. It's like having an elephant. There is this saying, I'm not sure if I'll quote it right. It says like how do you eat the whole elephant? And it says it's by chunks at a time or something like that. I'm not sure if I've said it right. That sounds very gross, but it's something in those lines. But unless you've been pragmatic enough to kind of break that goal down to something that you could actually accomplish on a daily basis. Remember, you only live a moment at a time. You only live a day at a time. So unless you can break it down, that goal will always be that huge. You know what I mean? I'll give you an example. If you say I want to lose 10 kilos this year, you're trying to cut down your weight. You say I want to lose 10 kilos this year. I mean, that's a huge endeavor. It's really big, but then as big as it is and as daunting as it is, if you actually think you've got the whole year to do it, if you can break that down to what you need to do today, you realize that the chunk, the amount of work or the amount of weight, if you like, that you need to shed today is not that much. You know what I mean? And therefore, if you can kind of break them down that way and say, right, so what do I need to do today to do it? And become pragmatic enough to know what you need to do today towards your goal, then the goal becomes less unrealistic, if you like. So yeah, that's the way to tackle it. With those who lose track, again, it's the same thing. The only reason you lose track is because you don't have a follow-through plan. Like you have this annual goal that I want to do this by the end, I want to do, come the end of the year, I want to do this, but you don't have a follow-through plan. You don't have a strategy on how you're going to accomplish that. And therefore, your daily habits, what you do on a daily basis, is not really geared towards you accomplishing that goal. And then as a result, obviously, you're not going to accomplish it because you just continue to do life. Life will just continue as normal. You just continue to have your normal habits, you know, your same routines that you've always had, and nothing really changes. And yeah, those who forget, again, they don't have any reminders. They've probably lost the excitement. You know, when you set these goals, you have this excitement. Oh, when I achieve this, this is going to be brilliant. But the truth of the matter is, life doesn't wait for you. And obviously, with time, other things come in, other problems, other stresses, and you lose the excitement. You forget about it. You start thinking about other things. And if you don't have things that will keep reminding you, keep at it, you don't have mentors, you don't have coaches, you know, then that's the importance of having these people around you. You don't have a mastermind group, people that will hold you to account to what you said you do. Then chances are you just forget about all those things, because at the end of the day, most of us, we react to life. You know, today you say I'm going to do this, but then tomorrow something comes up and you forget about all you said today, and you start chasing up what has come up and you have to deal with it. And unfortunately, that's the truth of life. But with developing this target-driven life, you start getting more control of it. You know, rather than being a reactive person, you become more of a proactive person. You don't react to things happening around you. You actually work them out. Things happen around you because of what you're doing, if you understand. You become more of a protagonist rather than a person reacting to things. And those who say they don't fulfill their ambitions or their resolutions because there are too many, again, it comes down to that same ratio of being overwhelmed. You wake up in the morning, you feel like you've got this whole mountain of things to do, but because you haven't broken them down to what you need to do on that particular day, it feels like it's too much. But most of the time, it's not too much. It's just that you haven't allocated time for the things you need to do on that particular day, and therefore that becomes the problem. And yeah, again, 38% never make resolutions. That again is very consistent, even with our poll as well. And again, what I can say to do with that is the same thing. If you don't plan for what you want to achieve, then you won't achieve anything. Or even if you do achieve something, you can't assess whether you've been successful at it or not, because you didn't set out to do anything. And it's not just that. If you don't have a sense of direction, remember I talked about direction earlier. If you don't have a sense of direction, then you can be thrown chucked up anywhere, and it's fine. You know, but and that's not a way to live, is it? Because I think to have a success, for you to count yourself as a success, you must have known what success means to you. You must have a definition of what is success to you. And therefore, when you set yourself up to accomplish that, you can kind of gauge on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis, yearly basis. And you'll see me mentioning these chunks, these time intervals, time and time again, because it's really important. And you have these sort of like checkpoints, if you like, to kind of say, am I being successful at what I set up myself to do? And therefore, it's very important to have these sort of mentalities, setting goals and setting targets and achieving them, because the more you achieve them, the more it boosts your energy, and you feel like, oh, you know, this is good. It boosts your energy, it boosts your enthusiasm, it brings that excitement, you know, it makes you happier, it brings stress levels down, your productivity up, and before you know it, you know, you become a pro at it, and it will serve you well, I guarantee you. Right. Okay. So yeah. So let me stop sharing that for a minute, and then we can get back to doing that in a minute. So basically, what are we trying to achieve here today? Basically, what we're going to do today, I'm going to share with you a few, I don't know what you're going to call them, tips, ideas, principles, if you like, that can help you in a journey to target-driven life, to setting goals and setting out a plan to achieve it. And we're going to have a discussion on different aspects of it, on what some people do, what different people do, and how people different schools of thought, if you like, perceive these things as we go. I have a comment here on the chat that says, an idiot with a plan can beat a genius without a plan. I love that. That's really good. And that is very true. And that is very true. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't take a genius. It's not rocket science. It's just simple principles that we this sounds really cocky, but it's just common sense. You know, there is nothing that I'm going to say here today, or anybody's going to say here today, that is going to be sort of like mind-boggling, like, oh my goodness, I've never heard this before. Where is this coming from? Charles, where do you get your materials from? No, everything I'm going to be sharing here with you today is just going to be the sort of thing you hear every day. You know, you've heard this before. And like I warned you before, there's going to be that sense of familiarity, like, oh yeah, I've heard this before. But try and shut that down. Try not be a cynic. You know, try not be sort of like, what is this he's saying? I've heard this before. This doesn't work. No. If you can put these principles to work, or at least you can put some of them to work, I guarantee you it will transform your life. I mean, I've seen it in my personal life. There are areas in my life that I was so poor. But since I started becoming more target-driven, more organized, more planned, if you like, I have seen a massive difference in the way I approach today, in my moods, in my relationship, in my energy, in just my well-being in general, even in my success levels, in my productivity. It makes a massive difference. It makes a massive difference in my business. It makes a massive difference in my relationships. It makes a massive difference in my finance. It makes a massive difference in my fitness and physical well-being. So it's really important. So I encourage you to jot it down, anything that you kind of feel like, that's quite interesting. Let me give it a try and see how it works. You do that, and I guarantee you it will help you. So that's those basically our goals here today. Let me bring that screen back, and we'll see where we're going with it. So the objectives, we will be highlighting key principles for setting and achieving your goals. Again, I said about knowledge to action. Make sure that what we speak about here today, you somehow find a way to put into action, because that's the only way you get the most out of these sessions. Otherwise, you'll just be sitting here and hearing what you've heard so many times, and it really not making a difference to you. And finally, aim is to bring the stress levels down. You know, to bring more joy to life. You know, like I said before, you only have today to live. You know, we planned for tomorrow, but we have today to live. So you want today to be as stress-free as possible. It doesn't matter how many things you have. It doesn't matter how much you want to accomplish come tomorrow. It doesn't matter how much you want to accomplish come the end of today. But what you want to do, you want to go through it all with so much energy, so much enthusiasm, so much joy, so much fulfillment, if you like. And so bringing stress levels down is the #1 goal. Becoming more productive is probably the second most important goal. And at the end of it all, you want to be successful. You know what I mean? So let's not beat around the bush. We want to be successful, whether that be economically, financially, in our business, what we do, in our philanthropy work, in spiritually, in our relationships, whatever it is, you want to be successful. And therefore, the principles and the tools you're going to be sharing today will go some distance in addressing that and help you become more successful in what you do. So the first principle that we're going to be talking about today is life by design. Okay. Now, what does it mean, life by design? I mean, I'll use this simple analogy. It's a simple analogy. You don't go out building a house unless you have a plan for it, isn't it? You think about the house you want. You probably go to an architect or an engineer and you say, like, I want to build a house. You tell the architect what sort of house you want. Most likely the engineer will ask you, what sort of person are you? How many children do you have? Do you like your space, or do you like cozy, kind of thing? How many bedrooms would you like? Do you have children? How many children do you have? Do you have pets? And then from that, they will start drawing up a plan and designs for the house that they think you might like. You know what I mean? And once you have that design, then you can look at it and think like, yeah, this is what I want. And then you go out and start building the house, isn't it? Or you get well, you get someone qualified enough to build a house. Otherwise, it will collapse if that was me. So, yeah, but that's what you do. You have a plan, you have a design, and you build a house afterwards. Because if you don't do that, I guess what's going to happen is you're going to start a project that you don't know how much it's going to cost you. Two, you don't quite know what the final outcome is going to be, so you're not going to be able to assess whether you're becoming successful or not. And three, chances are that project will never end, because probably you'll keep changing your mind as you go. You keep that goalpost because you don't quite know what your target is. And before you know it, that project will never end. The project that should have taken 1 year is going to take several years. Why? Because you didn't quite have a design. You didn't quite have a plan in place where you set out and say, like, right, based on my values and who I am and what I want in life and the sort of success I aspire for, then this is how I need to live my life. You know what I mean? Because basically life by design, that's what it is you designing a way of saying that this is how I'm going to approach life. This is how I'm going to live my life because this is what I want to achieve. And this is who I am. And so as far as designing your life, the first and the most important thing is your values. You need to set your values. You need to say, like, this is who I am and these are my values. And therefore, you need to know them. And why are values so important? Values are so important because so many people, how many times have you heard someone going through work, they're employed or self-employed or they have run a business, whatever it is, and they become so stressed and they're so unhappy with their work, and mainly it's because somehow or somewhere what they do clashes with their values, with their core values. They feel like failures because in a way they feel like they shouldn't do things the way they're doing it, because somehow the work and the kind of thing that they do doesn't quite sit well with their values. You understand what I mean? And you have a lot of people going through life like that, and it becomes very stressful, it becomes very difficult, it becomes very unfulfilling. And so I think when you're designing your life, the very first thing you need to set out is, what are my values? What do I stand for? What am I not willing to compromise for, you know? So that is really important, and that answers the question of who am I, you know? And that, I think that's very important. The second thing is about your dreams. Now with your dreams, this is what it's about. It's not necessarily the things you aspire for, but the things you look out and admire. You look at it and think like, wow, if I could be that, if I would get this, then I would say, wow, I'm successful. Oh, that is brilliant. You know, your what do you call them? Your icons, basically. The things you look up to and say, wow, that is where I want to be. You know what I mean? Those are your dreams. Whether you feel you can achieve them or not, that is absolutely irrelevant at this stage. Okay? So don't start getting worked out like, oh, that's my dream, but I don't think I can achieve that because looking at my circumstances and I don't think so. No. This is not time for that. That will come later. At the moment, when you talk about a dream, it's just something you look up and think, wow, that is what I would like to be. That is almost like a wish list, if you like. Okay? No boundary, no end. Sky's the limit. So that addresses the element of what makes you happy. You know what I mean? It's not about who you are, it's about what makes you happy. And finally, after that, then it comes to the element of goals and plans, which again is the question of how, you know. So okay, so how can I achieve my dream? How can I achieve how can I achieve my dream while maintaining my values, if you like? Now, to address those things holistically like that, that's what life by design is all about. Okay? I'll give you an analogy. It's like an organization. You know, any successful organization, right, will have a vision, and it will be a written vision. It will have a mission. It will have objectives, and they're all set out. They're all laid out. I mean, if you ask an organization, you say, what's your vision? What's your mission? What's your objective? And they look at you like, chances are they're not very successful. Pardon me. Chances are they're not very successful because if you don't have a vision, which vision is like the values. It's like who they are, what do they stand for, okay? If they don't have a mission, you know, a mission is like, what are they aspiring to achieve? Where are they trying to get to, you know? It's like the mission. You know, if they don't have the objectives, which is like their goals, their plans, okay? They need to have all those three things. And then after that, you have things like Do they have strategies? You know, what are the strategies do they have to be able to implement those goals? Now, strategies are things on the ground. And strategies will vary from time to time. You know what I mean? Like for instance, if say Shell company, okay, they have their vision. It's the same globally everywhere. They will have their mission. It'll probably be the same everywhere. Their objectives will rarely change. They'll pretty much be the same. When it comes to strategies, it will vary from time to time. It will vary from place to place. Okay. Shell company, if it went to Tanzania, for instance, based on the economic climate there, based on the political climate there, based on policies and, you know, human resources and resources in general, their strategies might be very different. So they will have to alter the strategies to try and fulfill the same objectives. Then the strategy might be very different from, say, if they were investing here in the UK. You know what I mean? And therefore, strategies is more to the ground. What do I need to do? How do I need to adjust myself to fulfill my goals, my objectives, basically? And finally, implementation. Implementation, now that's the day-to-day things. What do you do on a daily basis? And again, it's the same thing. I'll be using this analogy of organizations. But I know this session is tailored mainly to individuals. But I want you to see the analogy that because organizations are set to succeed, you know, whenever you form an organization, you form a company, you are setting it up to succeed. That is the fundamental principle of it. You're setting out an organization because the reason you set it up in the first place is because you want it to succeed. You want to fulfill a certain goal. You want to make profit if it's a business, or you want to meet a certain needs if it's an organization, a philanthropic one, or whatever it is. And therefore, it's always set up to succeed. And so if we want to set our lives, our individual lives, our personal lives to succeed, then an organization model is a very good one to follow. I don't know if you're following me. I don't know if you're getting it, because organization is always set to succeed. And therefore, if you can look how the organization is set up and try and set your life, your personal life, in a similar fashion, if you like, then you're in a road to success. And therefore, I'll be using this analogy a lot, an organization and this and that. So yeah, so you have in an organization, you have CEOs sitting out in their board meetings and the board of directors setting out the visions, you know, oh, this is what we're going to do. And and probably the mission as well. And then you have these sort of like maybe directors setting out the objectives, then probably have the managers doing the strategies. And then you have these employees and people who work down here doing the implementation, the supervisors and the other people in payroll doing the implementation. You will not have the directors doing the implementation, and you will not have the workers or the supervisors and doing setting out the vision or the strategies or the mission. So it is kind of set up that way, and everything is sort of compartmentalized, but it's done that way strategically to make it work. I'll give you this one example. Have you ever heard someone say, oh, my work is so boring? And you ask, why is it so boring? And they say, oh, I do the same thing every day. I go to work, it's so boring. I just keep doing the same thing every day. But have you ever wondered why you're doing the same thing every day? It is that way by design. It's not by mistake. Actually, your employer wants you to do exactly the same thing every day. Why? Because of the power of repetition. The more you do it, the better you become at it. I'll give you another example. Have you ever heard someone say, oh, my manager is useless? Why is the manager useless? Because I can do this job better than he can. I can do my job better than he can, but he's telling me how to do my job while I can do it better than he can. Yeah, you can do yours better than he can. Yes, it's true, because he's not doing your job. His job is to manage you. You are doing that job every day repetitively. Obviously, you'll be better than anybody else. But that's how the company has been designed and set up that way, because it works. You know, if you do it the same consistently every day, you get better and you become really good at it. The manager, on the other hand, he's crap at doing that, what you do, because he's not doing it every day. But ideally, he should be good at managing you, because he should be doing that every day. You see what I mean? So I want you to see it that way and start sort of reflect that on your life as well. That, do I have a vision for my life? Obviously, maybe you might not call it a vision, but do I have a dream for my life? What do I aspire for? Do I have a mission for it? Do I have objectives? How am I going to how have I set myself up to achieve them? Do I have strategies for it? You know, how am I going to implement them today? What am I doing today to fulfill that goal that I have? You know, that sort of thing. So life by design basically is gearing up for success. No plan basically is the same as a plan to fail. Okay. I'll leave that next bit. And another, there's this guy called Jim Rohn. I love this guy. He's brilliant. Steve loves him too. He's awesome. He said life always rewards the serious students for their labor, and I think living it's always important to live life as a student. You know, always to aspire for more, trying to be better, trying to improve. I'll give you this one example. You know, when we are young and you go to school, right? Formal education. There is something called curriculum. Now, curriculum, what does curriculum mean? Curriculum means that you bring this person from one end and he goes through this curriculum, and curriculum means he's doing this, A, B, C, D. He wakes up in the morning, he does this, he comes to school at 8 in the morning, he does 1, 2, 3, 4, and he does it consistently for 1 year. At the end of the year, we give him a test. If he passes, he goes to another year. And he does that, he does these things, set of things, set out like that, and he does that, and then he has a test, and if he passes that, that's what a curriculum is. And then at the end of several years, he does this exam we call SAT, or he does these exams we call GCSEs, or he does these exams we call A-levels, or he does these exams we call university exams, or whatever it is. We call those curriculums. So you go through that. Aim is that you go in on one side, a child, not knowing anything, you come out as the other side, a professional, a doctor, a lawyer, a teacher, a mechanic, a public speaker, like I am myself, whatever you are or you want to be, an athlete, whatever it is. That's called a curriculum. It is a design, and it is designed that way, and it is very rigid, and it is very strict. No wonder its success rate is really good. You know what I mean? A parent takes a child to school, and he is or she is almost certain that this child will at least finish GCSE. You know what I mean? Or this child will at least finish, or this child will at least go to university. And you're almost certain of that success, the success level of it, because it is designed that way. It is geared towards success. It is a curriculum. Now, the sad thing is that usually once we get out of formal education, when we come out of full-time education, and we go into employment or self-employment or just life generally, or whatever it is that we do afterwards, is we lose that discipline, we lose that design, we lose that curriculum. We don't have that systematic way of approach to life. It's like we don't quite have, say, like, right now, in the next 5 years, where do I want to be? What do I want to achieve? And what do I need to do on a daily basis to achieve that? How do I test myself that I'm achieving that? We don't have that curriculum anymore. And therefore, we don't have that design. So life by design is actually keeping that curriculum with you. And so Jim Rohn is saying that life does reward serious students for their labor. And therefore, I just want to encourage you that the more you become a student of life, the more you benefit from it. And yeah, so that's that as far as life by design is concerned. Let me look at the yeah, okay. Now let's move on. The next one I want to talk about is BHAG and I call it BHAG versus realistic goals. Now there are these two schools of thought. Okay, let me start by defining what BHAG is. BHAG is actually, by definition, BHAG is big, hairy, audacious goal. Is when you set up a goal so high that it makes you almost, it makes your skin jump. You kind of feel like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. You can't even talk about it. Have you ever felt that way? You have this goal, you have this ambition that you even feel embarrassed to talk about it. You know what I mean? Because you kind of feel like people will see you as a crazy person. That's what a BHAG is. You know what I mean? JFK, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, President of America, tells the world that in 10 years we're gonna put a man on the moon, something like that. And people think like, are you crazy? And because what you have to remember, back in those days, back in the 60s, you know, commercial flights were a new thing, you know, and therefore we're just about teething with commercial flights, and you're talking about going to the moon. This is crazy. You know, that's what BHAG is all about. You know what I mean? Or when Bill Gates in his dorm room trying to create this software called Microsoft, he's thinking about putting a PC on every household, you know, in the world. You know, that's the BHAG. It's crazy. People look at him and think like, what are you talking about? You can't even pass your university exam and you're talking about putting a PC on every. Go away. What are you talking about? That's what a BHAG is. You know what I mean? Or Noah. I'll tell you about the Bible story. I love reading the Bible. You know, Noah's Ark. You know, he's telling people that I'm going to build this ark. I'm going to build an ark so big it's going to fit all creatures of the world in twos. And people look at him and think like, what? What did you learn about making boat? What is a boat anyway? What is that thing that crazy shaped thing you're trying to build? This is crazy. That's what BHAG is all about. So you've got these schools of thoughts, right? You've got one school of thought that says if you're going to set targets, if you're going to have goals, then you should have them so high. They say reach up for the stars. Is it? Hang on. You reach up for the stars, and then if you miss them, you'll hit the moon. Is it something like that, or is it reach up for the moon and then you reach? I don't know. Whatever. But something like that. So you have that one school of thought, and then you've got another school of thought that says no, you need to set realistic goals. We call them. What do you call them? SMART goals, you know, as two schools of thought. So others will say, forget about the, you know, these unrealistic big goals because they'll just frustrate you. They'll demoralize you because it will make you feel like you're not succeeding, you're not fulfilling anything, you're not being successful. So don't go down that route. What you're supposed to do, just set SMART goals, little chunks that you can fulfill every day. Those are two schools of thought. Now, I come right in the middle. I don't know where you are, but I come right in the middle. Why am I coming right in the middle? I'm coming right in the middle because there is a place for both of them, okay? There is a place for both of them. What do I mean by there is a place for both of them? The same as in an organization. I'll go back to the example of the organization, right? When you have a board meeting, right? They don't talk about SMART goals in a board meeting, okay? The CEO and the board of directors will never talk about SMART goals. They're not going to start going specific, measurable, what is it? Specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, or relevant time. They don't do any of that. It's absolutely none of their business. All they are thinking, they're just thinking, where are we going to take this company? How are we going to defeat the competition? How are we going to be the best company in the world? How are we going to make sure that we put a PC on every household? They are focused on the BHAG, okay? That's what they do. It is down to the managers and the supervisors and the implementers down when it goes to the level of implementation, where people would sit down and say, right, okay, now what do we need to do? How are we going to successfully achieve this? What do we need to do today? And that's where the SMART goals come in. That's where the time limits come in. That's where the achievability comes in. That's where the resources and the relevance and the realism, the realistic nature of things come in. You see? You remember when I was talking about strategy, I said that's where you look at the ground and see how you adjust the strategy. That's where it comes. So there is a place for both of these, even in your personal life, that you can have this really crazy, audacious goal that you think, this is what I want to achieve in 10 years. And it's usually long term. Think this is what I want to achieve in 10 years, this is what I want to be in 10 years. And if at the moment you might look at yourself and think, really, in my personal circumstances at the moment, I don't think I'm going to achieve this. I can't see how I'm going to achieve this. It doesn't matter. But you having that gives you a sense of purpose, gives you a sense of direction, gives you a sense of something you can look up to. But then when it comes to your daily habits and what you do on a daily basis, then you can come and look into realistic goals. So these are not mutually exclusive. You can have both and you can combine them and make the use of both of them for your benefit. Let me go back to the screen share really quickly. So yeah, so BHAG, just as realistic goals. So BHAG is like visions or dreams. I give you those examples over there. So it's very important to free your minds. Think beyond your means, but act within. It's very important. You always make sure that you think outside your means. You don't have to look at your means and say, oh, I have to limit my thoughts. I have to limit my dreams, my aspirations, because I feel like I can't achieve them. No, just allow your mind to go wild. But when it comes to how you act, you have to act within your means. Right. Let's go to the realistic approach to goals. This is when you break down your BHAG, your audacious goal, into implementable chunks. Now, I've got this really nice acronym here that I came up with, realistic. The R stands for repetitive, E stands for exciting, A stands for achievable, LI stands for little or small, S stands for strategic, TI stands for timed, and C stands for clear. Now, really quickly, repetitive, I've spoken about that. You remember when we talked about employment? Oh, I do the same job every day, boring. Repetitive, again, it's very important to have a routine in your life. And one of the sessions we'll have probably in the future in this same Today Matters is about routine and power of repetition. And it's very important. So doing something repetitively, keep doing it because you get better at it. So that's really important when it comes to realistic approach to goals. It has to be exciting. We talked about this. When you do something and you lost that sense of excitement, it wears you down. And again, part of the reason we do these things is because you want to bring the stress levels down. You don't want to have more fulfillment. So obviously you want your goals to be exciting, to be fulfilling, to be rewarding. Achievable. It has to be something that you can achieve, whether it is in that particular day or that particular week or that particular month. It has to be little, very small. When it comes to realistic goals, don't worry about your VHAG. Just worry about what can I achieve today. Little chunks every day, little you can do every day. Keep at it, keep chunking. You'll be amazed how much you can achieve in a year if you have that attitude on a daily basis. It has to be strategic. I've said so much about strategy. Timed, you know about that one. And at the end of it all, clear. It has to be very clear. I'll give you an example of that. I'll go back to the same example about health and well-being, because I'm very passionate about fitness and health and well-being. You have a target. You say, I want to lose weight. Is that very clear? No, it's not. A clear goal would be something like this. I want to lose 2 pounds by the end of the week. And I want to lose it by running for half an hour, 3 times a week. You understand what I mean? It's very clear. These are the objectives. This is what I'm setting out to do. This is what I'll be doing. This is what at the end of the week, I will assess whether I've succeeded. So at the end of the week, I'll come and say, I set myself out to be running 3 times a week for at least half an hour. Did I do that? Yes, I did that. I set myself out to do this and this and that at the end of the week. Did I do that? No, I didn't. Right, I said that by the end of the week, I want to lose 3 pounds. Have I lost 3 pounds? Yes or no? You understand? So it's very clear. You can, by the end of the week, you can say that I have messed up, or you can say that, woohoo, I've done well, I can set a new goal. See? So when it comes to realistic goals, it has to be very, very clear. Third point. So the first point was about life by design. Second one is about BHAG and realistic goals. And I've mentioned that to show you where people are and how you can kind of marry the two in your life and see how that can benefit you from day to day. Third one is about focusing on habits. Now, habits are really important, and our lives, more than 95% of our lives is habits. Most of the things we do them because we've always done them. You know, you wake up in the morning, you don't think. When you wake up, I don't know what your routine is. Maybe you go to the bathroom, you brush your teeth, you do this, or maybe you read a book, or you pray, or you go to your children's room and kiss them or wake them up or whatever it is, or you go and make breakfast. You have your routine, or you do this, and we are very routine creatures, if you like, and therefore habits and routines are really important. You can't run away from them, and therefore we need to learn to harness them to our advantage, if you like. And therefore, even when it comes to goals, the most important thing and where you want to get yourself at is to very quickly try and turn your goals and your plans into habits. Turn them into what you normally do. This is me. This is what I do. You know what I mean? For instance, if back to the area of fitness. If you're into losing weight, for instance, and you set yourself out to be running, then you want the running to be a habit, to be something that you do, something that you can't do without. Not just because you want to lose weight, no, but because that's who you are. That's what you do. When I wake up, I always run. You know what I mean? Because once you get to that stage, then you have geared yourself up for success. Okay. And now this is where the SMART goals come. Okay. The SMART goals really should be a tool to help you develop these habits. You know, because they're very short, very timed. You're trying to see how well you've done it, how successful you've done it. If you haven't, you see why you haven't. You improve, and you do that, you do that, you do that, and before you know it, you become an expert. You're really good at it, and you move into another habit, and you keep building them. And before you know it, you have successful habits, and we know successful habits lead to success. Okay. So yeah, so like I said before, don't focus on the big habit. Don't focus on that big, hairy, audacious goal. Focus on your daily habits. Focus on what you do on a daily basis. Life has ways to create shortcuts to success, you know, only if you stay the course. How many of you have ever been to IKEA? I love IKEA. IKEA is brilliant. First time I went to IKEA, I was so frustrated. I felt so lost. I felt like, oh, this huge place. Like, well, what's going on? But I was like, why do people love IKEA so much? But after going there a few times, I kind of got the vibe of it. I got the hang of it. I started loving it. I started noticing, I don't know if you've noticed, they've got these, you know, you go around, right? You're following this map and it shows you going around and you go around and go around. But they've got these really cool shortcuts. I don't know if you've noticed them. And if you look at the maps, they've got these sort of like dotted lines, shortcuts, sort of like you can get a certain point and there is like a shortcut where you can go from, say, section 7 and it jumps all the way to, say, section 18 or something ridiculous like that. I don't know if you've seen those shortcuts. And at first I didn't really know them. So usually I'll be going around. If I'm looking for section 18 and I'm on section 7, I'm like, oh, I have got a long way to go. I just keep going around and go around. But once I became a pro at it, every time I go around, I'm looking for these shortcuts. And I'm like, looking right, I'm trying to go to 18. Now I'm in 6. Is there a shortcut that might take me closer, quicker? And I keep looking at them, and then quickly I say, oh, there is this shortcut. So and then I look for it, and the shortcut is usually between furniture, and you can't cut through furniture, and you find yourself in a different section. It's really cool. So even in life, there are shortcuts, and what happens is, as long as you stay the course, as long as you're doing what you need to do, as long as you have the strategy and you keep doing what you're doing, life has this really fantastic way of providing these shortcuts. We call them opportunities. For instance, you meet this person that gives you this really great opportunity that you didn't really set out to meet this person. You were just doing what you are doing to reach a goal. But here you meet this person, and this whole new world of opportunities open up for you just because of this one encounter. So it creates connections. Sometimes people marry to their success. You know what I mean? They didn't plan it, but well, they found this person, they fell in love. Is a very successful person. Whoa, they were, you know, all of a sudden they're millionaires, you know. Sometimes even tragedy, you know what I mean? I've heard of a person whose a bullet to their head became an opportunity for success. I don't know if you remember a few years back, this girl from Afghanistan, Malala. Is it Malala? I think it was Malala. I think she was a sort of like a local activist, a very young girl, a local activist about girls' rights and education and this and that, and with stringent rules there and this and that. She got shot. They were trying to kill her and they shot her in the head, but she survived. And she came to Europe, in Germany, I think that she had an operation. And all of a sudden she became so popular and she was like this instant sensation. Before you know it, she was being invited by presidents and different show presenters, and all of a sudden she had a stage and a voice, and all of a sudden she was so successful in what she ventured out to do. She was very local, but all of a sudden she became a voice for women around the world. Why? Because she got a bullet in her head. So sometimes even tragedies can be a bit. So life has these really funny ways, really cool ways to bring these shortcuts to life. But the only way to get them is for you to stay the course, to stay at it and keep doing what you're supposed to do, and focus on the habits. Keep chunking and doing what you need to do on a daily basis, and other things will happen. The next one is, don't worry, we've only got 5. After this, it's just one and then we're done. The other one is how seriously do you take yourself? I always ask myself this question, and I want you to ask yourself this question as well. Are you more likely to break your own promise than a promise you've made to someone else? Say, are you, if you, how many times have you told yourself that, right, I'm going to do this, and you haven't done it? But it's more difficult if you told someone else that I will do this for you. It becomes more difficult, and you feel more obliged to do that for that person because, oh, I've already told that person. Do you understand what I'm saying? And I think that's human nature. We tend to value more commitments we've made to others than the commitments we've made to ourselves. Now, taking yourself seriously is quite the opposite of that. I think we need to be committed to ourselves, not necessarily more than to others, but to ourselves. The way we are committed to ourselves should be the gold standard. We should. It's the same as what the Bible says. It says like love your neighbor as you love yourself. You know, it has to start with you. So your commitment to self, your commitment to your own goals, your commitment to your own ambitions, your commitment to your own life design, if you like, has to be the most important thing. You know, that if you would say that today I'm going to do this, make sure you do it, because most of the time your success or failure is going to be anchored in that. And this is really important, because as much as you may have a plan, this and that, everything that we've talked about before, if you're not going to have that resolve, that commitment, taking yourself seriously, what you want, and say like, this is me and this is what I'm going to do, then everything is going to fall through. Everything is going to fall through. And so it's really important to have that commitment. It's like again, the organization. If the organization has that sort of easygoing mentality, you know, I don't really care. The CEO doesn't really care. The directors don't really care. The managers, nah, who cares? You know, the employees come to work, you know, I don't really care. Guess where that company is going to be in 2 years? Nowhere. So it's the same thing with yourself. You need to take yourself really seriously and stop self-sabotaging yourself. Planning without follow through, thinking without writing down, writing but never reading. You know, how many times have I written things down like, oh, I need to do this, I need to make sure that I write it down, or you write it down, but then you never go back to reading your notes and seeing what you actually set yourself out to do, you know, or you read on what you say you will do, but you never really act on it. So it's really important to take yourself seriously. William Ernest Henley, a really famous poet who wrote the Invictus poems, said in one of his poems, actually the Invictus poem, at the very end, he has this magnificent quote, and I love it. It says, I am the master of my fate, I am the captain of my soul. How powerful is that? You know, a captain takes safety of his vessel and the success of his journey very seriously. You know what I mean? And if you have that attitude, that I'm the captain of my soul, it means that I'm going to take myself really seriously. And I just want to encourage you today that from now on, take yourself very seriously. If you have your resolve, if you have your resolutions, if you have your plans, if you have your aspirations, don't let them rest. Don't let them, you know, disappear. Don't let them rot. Do something about it. Start working them out. You know, start doing something about it. If you can't put yourself to account, find a mentor, find a coach, find someone who can hold you to account, and start taking yourself seriously. And I really, really, really encourage you to start journaling. Journaling basically means writing down your ideas, writing down your thoughts, writing down your plans, your to-do lists, having them jotted down in a very systematic way in a book, not in a piece of paper. And therefore, you can always go back to them, and having the habit of reading that journal every day and trying to do what you set yourself out to do. Also, I really encourage you following a program. There are fantastic programs out there. There is a program that I'm personally following. I'll probably share it with you another day. It's a really good program. I'll share it with you so that you can see the steps of it, and then you can develop your own program or follow another. But it's really important having this, because these programs will break down your goals and your plans and your to-do list from yearly to quarterly to monthly to weekly to daily, so that when you wake up in the morning, you know exactly what you need to do as far as your plans are concerned. So I really encourage that, and that would be fantastic. The final thing, woohoo, we're getting to the end. Life balance. life balance. Now, like I said before, there are different attributes to success. Success is not uniform. You know, you can be successful financially, physically, in relationship, spiritually, in your lifestyle, in your business, and you could be successful in one area and not be successful in another. Okay, and we see examples of that everywhere. You know, you have this fantastic guru, Jeff Bezos. He's the richest man in the world, very successful in business and financially, but he just had a really dramatic and traumatic divorce a while back. And so as successful as he is when it comes to business and finance, he was not very successful in relationship, you know, that particular relationship. I'm not talking about any general relationship, but in that particular relationship. And you have lots of these examples. So success is very multifaceted, and it comes in lots of different ways. So when we talk about life balance, we're talking about when you're thinking about success and when you're aspiring to something, always have this holistic approach, because it will serve you well. A lot of people make a mistake of being very narrow-minded. Someone is so focused on becoming rich, for instance, that they end up neglecting their families, or they think so much about becoming a very successful speaker that they end up neglecting their relationships, or they think about being so physically fit and they spend so much time exercising and doing this and that, to the point that they don't spend enough time thinking about their business and about their finances, and they end up messing their work, and their income becomes really poor, and as a result they can't even finance their fitness plans and things like that. And therefore it's very important when you're planning out and you're setting up, and that's the importance of the design, okay? When you're designing your life, to think of it holistically and think of all these aspects of your life. That, right, I want to be very rich. Okay, I want to be very financially free when I retire. The question is, will I have the health to go with it? Or will I be very financially successful when I retire, but then my health is done, you know, I can't even get out of the house, you know. And so you have to think of this holistically. How do I look after my health? How do I look after my lifestyle? How do I look after my business? How do I look after my relationship? So that you don't get too skewed to one side and end up not very successful. So in generally, the imbalance usually leads to stress. Stress leads to frustration. So here you come, you feel like you're very successful, but then you don't quite enjoy your success. Why? Because you don't have that balance. So in one hand, you have so much money, or you're very successful in your profession or your career, but on the other hand, you don't have the fulfillment, because you don't have time with your family, you don't have time with your loved ones, you don't have time with your friends. So you're very successful, but you're not happy. You're not fulfilled. So it does lead to frustration, because you're frustrated. You feel like, I should enjoy this, but you're not quite enjoying it. And then as a result, what happens? Eventually that leads to failure. Even in those areas that you've gone forward, you start messing up because you don't have that balance. You're not in balance with yourself. So always think holistically. And usually the more balance you have, the more lasting results you have. And that's the end of the presentation. Let me stop sharing that and get back to the group. So there it is, guys. So in a nutshell, those are the things we've talked about. We've talked about, as a quick recap, we've talked about life by design. We've talked about BHAG and the importance of having BHAG, those big, hairy, audacious goals, what you really want to achieve, you know, those crazy goals. For instance, I have one for myself. I'll share it with you, and it's going to sound really crazy, but I'll share it with you. I have this. If you come to my little office upstairs in my office, I've written myself a check. I've written myself a check for £1 million, and I've actually dated it there. I think the date is about, I think it's the end of 2024, I think, or something like that. So I've written myself a check to Charles Stephen, £1 million, and that date. So I put it up there, and I've actually stuck it there. And to me, I want to cash that check in now it's what? It's 4 years. When I wrote it, I think it was 5 years. In 4 years. If you ask me how I'm going to make £1 million in 4 years, I have no idea. I really don't know how I'm going to make £1 million in 4 years. Don't ask me that. But to me, that's my big, hairy, audacious goal. You understand what I mean? financially speaking. Actually, not financially speaking, that's business speaking. That's the amount of money I want to make at that time. So that's my big hairy audacious goal as far as that is concerned. I might have a big hairy audacious goal as far as something else is concerned. It might be to do with it. It might be to do with anything. It's not just financial. It can be anything. So those are really important, and I encourage you to really go for it. Don't limit yourself. But at the same time, you need to have the realistic goals, the smart goals, the things that you can achieve on a daily basis, and they have to be tailored towards that big hairy audacious goal. Okay. And therefore, don't worry about that big hairy audacious goals. Remember, I told you life always has shortcuts. You can always find a shortcut in something that happened, and you realize a door opens, and voila, £1 million is right here. You know, right? So that's big hairy audacious goals. The third thing we talked about is about focusing on habits. Always focus on habits. Try and create those winning habits, and they will serve you well. The fourth thing we talked about is what do we talk about? I don't want to forget here again. You need to take yourself seriously. And the final thing is you need to achieve life balance. Make sure that you address all the areas of your life as you gear yourself towards achieving your goals. Do we have any questions or do we have any inputs before we wind up? I'm going to go through the chat section. If you have any question or you have any comment, anything you want to shout out for a couple of seconds, you can unmute yourself and do that as I go through the chats. You're very welcome.
Hi, Charles.
Hi, who's this?
It's Noah.
Hey, Noah, how are you doing?
I'm okay. I'm okay.
Go on, brother.
Just a quick question regarding the daily goals, which I think that's the big one, which I always find a little harder to manage, simply because most of the time you have your daily goals, and during the day you get either phone calls, you get friends, you get distraction, I'll call it, which sometimes can just take you, to the left, whether you want to go to the right. I don't know how to manage that, and sometimes you could, it's very tricky to some of them, of course, you can say no, but some of them they're very tricky to actually, say no.
Absolutely. Okay, yeah, that is a really good question. I will explain it to you simply this way. I'll use this analogy to make sure you understand where I'm coming from. When a plane is traveling from, say, one city to another, they set up their coordinates that this is how they're going to fly. They have what they call a flight plan, okay? And the flight plan has a path that they've set up. This is how they're going to travel to get where they're going, okay? But 90% of the time, once that plane has taken off, it will be off the flight plan that they set out to do when they started. Why? Because of the weather changes, the wind speed changes. Sometimes it may be some turbulent weather and they may have to fly higher. Or sometimes there may be another aircraft coming and they have to fly lower. Sometimes the airport where they need to land might be busy and they have to take a detour and go round. Sometimes there may be an emergency and do an emergency landing somewhere else. But the key point is, because they have a flight plan and they have a destination and there's something they're working towards, they always revert back to where they want to go. Do you understand what I mean? So it is not a problem that you will be distracted, because you will be. I mean, for instance, I may wake up in the morning and have a plan that this is what I want to achieve, and then my child falls ill. What do? I have to take the child to the hospital, and I might end up spending the whole day in the hospital. It's a distraction. But the key thing is, if you have a plan in place, if you have things in place, if you have a strategy in place, and where you know where you want to go, then you have your way of assessing yourself whether you've successfully done that or not, and you have somewhere to revert back to when you go off course. So when those distractions that you mentioned come, if you have a plan in place, you can always get back to them and say, right now I can come back and complete what I set out to do. Or you can even say, right, this distraction is not very important. This is more important, and therefore I will ignore the distraction and stick to my plan. But if you don't have that plan in place, chances are any distraction will toss you everywhere, because basically you don't have a standard, you don't have a gauge, you don't have a direction, and therefore if something comes up, you get lost. So you start in this way and then you end up where you don't even want to be, because you don't have that flight plan, as the example I gave you. So yeah, distractions will come, but at the end of the day, if you have a flight plan, if you have that design, if you have that target, and that's why I talked about target-driven life. If you still have a target, even when you go off course, you can readjust. You remember the strategies? You readjust because the ground circumstances have changed, but you are readjusting to fulfill the same vision. You are readjusting to fulfill the same vision. You are readjusting to fulfill the same objectives. I don't know if I've tried to answer that question.
Yeah, that's good. Thanks.
Brilliant. Do you have any other question? I will invite one more question, and then we will wind up because we've run out of time. Any other question, guys? If there isn't, it seems very quiet. Oh, this is a really quiet, a tough crowd, eh? Give me at least a thumbs up if we're together. I can see a couple of new messages here. Let me just scroll down before I wind up. Good analogy with flight plan. Oh, brilliant. I'm glad it helped. Very good life lesson. Stay on course. The prize is ahead. Wonderful. That is really, really good. So yeah, thank you very much, guys. Thank you for bearing with me. I've been talking nonstop for a good hour or so. Actually, more than an hour. And you guys have been there with me. So I apologize if that was a bit too much. But I thought that is a good lesson to learn. And I believe, if you get one thing out of it and try and run with it and see how it works. And if you have any questions, you're